Ladies and gentlemen, hello, thank you. Thank you very much. Expert panel, don't feel too much pressure, folks. Expert panel, how far can we accelerate with AI? Now, I didn't name this, because if I had named it, I would have named it, how far can we accelerate with AI, brackets, can we accelerate at all? If you have seen, I'm sure you've seen many AI talks this year, this is going to be the one because this contains 400% more AI talk than any other talk. It's going to be good. I am joined by James Brown of Schroders, Simone Steele, who you've seen this morning from Deutsche Bank. We've got Mike Jones from Love Holidays. I love holidays.
Love holidays.
Everybody loves holidays. And Madonna, Sting, Prince, Fuzz of XT, of JUXT. How did you get the solo name? Maybe we'll find out later.
Yeah.
So I was looking along this line, and I reckon, not wishing to judge anyone's age too much, but I reckon between us we must have over a century of tech experience, right? I mean, you add it up, I account for too many of those years. I'm not comfortable about that. But over a century of tech experience, and yet this year it feels like we're all beginners again.
Yeah.
We're all like, could we muster the 10 years that the average recruiter would ask for Claude experience? I'm not sure we could. So, in our best attempt to be experts in a world that is changing so rapidly, I thought I'd go along the line to begin with and say, James, where is your organization? Where are you at with AI? What's the current state of play?
Yeah, so I work for Schroders. If you don't know, Schroders is a very interesting financial services company, 200 years old, and they have, surprisingly, when I talk to lots of other people in financial services, been very bullish with AI. We have been rolling it out, quite aggressively for a number of years. We have also become, circumstantially for other reasons, very good at metrics. So measuring the impact of what we do as an enterprise function. And so we have kind of been in the difficult position of both being able to roll out AI, the tools, the practice, the agents, and at the same time, an eye on the metrics, kind of, it's not moving in necessarily as we do things. We are starting to find some success at the moment. And I think it's starting to come together with what other people are learning is how this all works.
Tease us. What's one success you found?
So, unfortunately, I think talking to some of the others, one of the hot metrics, which is, if you were to pick one, it would have been the one that we didn't have, is deployment frequency.
Oh, really?
And as we're looking there, and we're looking at teams that are specifically well-shaped, well-connected to the business, work well together, follow good practice. It's too early to say because there's not enough data points and not enough time has gone past, but they appear to be flying.
Okay.
So hopefully we're in a world now where we say, how do we get more of those?
Okay, so you are actually seeing some acceleration and you're just looking forward to it doubling down.
Again, it's too early to say.
Fair enough.
I don't want to call success just yet, but...
You should not be working for a financial house if you're that comfortable with writing contracts on the fly, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Simone, how about you? How are things over at Deutsche?
Yeah, I saw you all this morning, so I'm working with Deutsche Bank, the corporate bank part of Deutsche Bank, which is a 90,000 people strong organization globally. The corporate bank is looking at AI and our current stage twofold. One for software engineering, like most of the talks today, but one for operational efficiency, for better understanding of our clients and deploying AI-based solutions. Not AI for us to create solutions, but the actual running of the business. And I think the acceleration has been great. The results, not the acceleration, because we have in my portfolio 142 use cases of AI-led solutions for the business, all of them in varying stages of ideation, prototyping. Some have been running in production, and we didn't know, so we had to register them. There are lots of activity happening there. But for software engineering, which actually has an outcome to our clients, is the harvesting of knowledge. What do I mean by this? Is one of the most successful cases we have is we call change advisory. We look at the change going into production from the perspective of the user stories or the specs, from the perspective of test coverage, from the perspective of the quality of the change ticket that we still have to put through our change systems, and provide a score for risk awareness. Like if I have 80 changes going into production in critical payments at the same time on the weekend, it raises some red flags. And that for me is knowledge harvesting. Harvesting from the development life cycle through to, is this going to impact a critical process? And I think that's one of the good use cases that are not necessarily creating more code, but creating better outcomes for the clients with stability of production. We're able to increase a little bit of the change pace without creating any production incidents.
From what I know, some of that relates to how things are going at Love Holidays with you, Mike.
Oh, yeah, it does. I'm Mike, CTO of Love Holidays, but I've got a strange job because I also look after a contact center as well. So maybe I'm the odd one out for a number of reasons, but don't work in finance. I also don't like holidays, but that's another call. But I enjoy technology. And our kind of AI rollout's going, I think, really, really well. So we've been measuring everything along the way. So it's got 3 parts to it. It's got the way that we're changing how we're building software, the way that we're changing the rest of the organization, and how we're changing, the learnings from those 2, how we're changing the culture of the business. So if I take on the first one, which would be building software, we're somewhere around now 80% of all code is assisted by AI into production. Year on year, we're seeing, and that's an increase of about, I think it's about 80% in terms of deploys that we're seeing across the organization. That's just one team, that's the entire team. That's with, I think, 6% less people to do that as well. So we also track code health as a way, as well as DORA metrics. So we've got metrics on how the rollout's going across that, and in terms of like code health that we use CodeScene for, and we've got healthier code than ever. So that's that part of the organization.
That's surprising.
I also look after the contact center, which is, again, very strange. So 1,000 people in 3 different countries, but we've been embedding AI into that organization for like 4 years. So high-level metrics for that. We're saving about 25% in terms of contact center costs. NPS for our customers has gone from 30 to a market-leading 70. And actually, the engagement of the teams themselves is now the best in the entire organization. So we're trying to take some of these learnings at the moment and really kind of reimagine our operating model as a business.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm happy to talk about any of those ones, but yeah, loads of examples, lots of cool stuff within that. But
the thing about you 3 is I think we could have a 90-minute chat with each one of you. We'll keep moving. One of the other things that unites you 3 is you work for a single company and you seem to be roughly on top of getting the feedback of how this is going. Fuzz, I'm interested. You're the one who is in a consulting agency. You must see a cross-cutting world of different businesses.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in the field, and is it that rosy?
It's varied. I work for JUXT, which is part of the Grid Dynamics universe. And there are countless clients that we work. I can't go into the numbers because actually I don't have them perfectly at hand. There are a number of clients that we work with. We have centers of excellence within JUXT and within Grid Dynamics for AI. AI practices both in terms of systems engineering, software engineering, monitoring and sort of the operational side, but also embedding agentic workflows within real products for a whole wide number of sectors, wide set of sectors. One of the themes I want to come back to, and we're going to probably touch base on that, is how important feedback is for us. So we have, as I mentioned, chapters where we sit down every week and we go, well, what are the learnings that we have from all the experience that we've had in the last week in our various corners of the world? and what can we learn from that? What can we do as experiments to see how we can push forward our assumptions, our learnings, and really maybe sort of solidify some science out of it. And I think the work that Henry's been doing, Henry's been leading the what we've been doing in the sort of JUXT chapter for AI, and out of that was born Allium, which he spoke about in his presentation. So clients, what are they doing? A lot of different things. Certain clients that I work with are relatively more mature, I guess, in some ways, and they've gone through several years of utilizing code completion for just lines of code to entire test classes and small sets of units, to where they are now, where they're utilizing maybe Allium or other tools to define specs, to then generate code, to then write tests, to examine how operations is working, so how a grid might be working, or a cloud deployment is working, and debugging that and so on. So they're getting kind of far with it, and they're getting really focused on measurement of actual delivery versus the amount of tokens spent. There's a keen eye on that, I think, which is it's an important metric.
That seems like the first thing to really dig into, because I think you and I, neither of us are going to name specific companies. You three have to. But I may have just recently seen a company where their one and only measurement was the token spent leaderboard. Mm-hmm. And the programmers who were low on the leaderboard were spoken to sternly. Mm. Simone, come on.
I have to say something about this.
You can be horrified if you like, but what should we actually be measuring in a company?
I think the measure complexity for me still wins, right? Are you with the, I don't mind if it's a few tokens, a lot of tokens, you have the deep pockets that you do, or not. But the outcome for me is, in a complex system, it can only become more expensive to maintain, debug, much more vulnerabilities. I suppose you could even apply AI to reduce them, but in effect, you are creating a complex, you are exploding this complexity even more. So finding a metric of complexity is elusive to all of us, but we can have good proxies.
Okay.
And I think using the precious tokens to reduce the amount of legacy you have is probably undersold as an AI niche. Because of course, if you are working in one of those systems that potentially has a critical or crucial role to play, but is deemed as end of life, or end of the support contract, and you have to get specialist support in there, there is little incentive for you in that team to make it better, right? So elevating the metrics to a system-level complexity is really important to make the right decisions of where to apply AI.
Do you know what it reminds me of? We went through this whole thing of teaching management as programmers, that it's not lines of code generated, it's lines of code spent, right? I sort of have a rough intuition of increasing complexity, lowering complexity. I have no idea how I would actually go about measuring the amount of complexity and whether it's going down or up.
I think the view of a business process is underrated, right? So I use my example around our payment rails, and some of those processes involve 60 applications. So we need to really pick a focus. I don't think there is a single measure that will say, is this organization complex or simple? No, but is this business process complex or simple? And that is a business concern, first and foremost, right? Because if I put a payment here and it comes out over there and I don't care, then that's not very engaged business sponsor for the work. So each process has its own complexity, and I think it's number of hops. I was talking at lunchtime about data flows, right? This is a really dangerous word, and regulators are all over it. They need to know how the data flows. And I'm saying, well, first of all, it doesn't flow anywhere. We know it's getting copied. And just by the sheer accounting exercise of how many times this data gets copied, you get a good metric for complexity, right? And usually flow means something really clean, right? You put it here and it gets in there. But think about the storage, the versioning, the auditability of each hop, the backups you have to retain, how complex it is to do a disaster recovery test. How can you trust even, right? And that's, I think, what I would strongly pursue for a complexity measure.
Okay, I was booking flights to San Jose yesterday, and the number of times I had to change flight was definitely a sign that things were going badly.
So you experience complexity, don't you?
Yeah, you do, yeah.
You need to make a note of these things in your organizations, like this doesn't feel right. You know?
At the same time, though, I think I'm going to jump to Mike on this, because we were in the hallway. You were showing me your Claude-driven dashboard of the data at work. So you can give me some more very concrete ways of measuring. Right?
I get my laptop.
Yeah, project it up.
Like demo.
If I zoom out a little bit, I think the things that we look at that kind of unifies everything across the business, so I'm just not looking at technology, would be cost, utilization, and impact. So impact being like the really important one, and so we measure each of those. So utilization is like almost a solved problem, especially within engineering now. I think there was an article even the other day, which was, what was it? AI isn't a CTO's problem, it's the CFO's problem now, as it moves to how much it costs.
We can all believe that.
So there's like, that's the kind of story that we're looking at. Cost is increasing. Last month, we've got a great relationship with OpenAI. They gave us it for free for like 4 months. We spent about 400 grand in a month last month, just kind of playing around with it. But on average, it's about like 20% of the engineering costs. So what's really important now is link that to impact. We're lucky that we're a business that's growing quite quickly, about 20 to 30% year on year. So we've got a lot to play with there, but we're trying to link all of the work that we're doing with impact on the business. We've been able to do that a lot in the contact center, but it's being able to find the processes that we can now measure how much more business value we're creating.
So what does that mean? Would you be taking Simone's 142 AI-driven projects and measuring whether people are actually using them in production, whether they're generating revenue, whether they're burning tokens?
Well, so at the moment, we have metrics that correlate with business performance. So that's where the DORA things become interesting. Like as I said at the beginning, if you look at deploys year on year, we can do 80, 90% more work with a smaller team than we did last year, that's kind of cool, but that's just the first step. The thing after that is almost like shots on goal. So how many experiments have we got into production? How many things we work, but we're moving closer and closer to I was chatting with our VP of engineering yesterday about how we are even like wrapping our OKRs in terms of like token spend, so we can actually start like tying all of that piece together, because it is just getting increasingly expensive, and we don't want to start like pulling these tools out or just like the way that we've done it in the contact center, we've managed to keep the headcount the same. We've just delivered a much better experience for our customers as we've grown with those people. Like, the jobs have changed and where spend that's different. So we're trying to find ways of like linking it like to outcome, because that's going to be the most important thing for our business at least.
Okay. I have an instinct that this is going to contrast with someone working at a long-established, 2-centuries-old bank, right? Because I would think that money for tokens is probably easy to come by, new projects hard, and living with legacy is where the real measurement happens.
Yeah, so, I mean, we were talking about this before, but firstly, there are people in this room who probably almost didn't make it here today because of running out of tokens. And no doubt maybe working during this conference for the same reason. But on the metrics, right, the token maxing, it's people turning to alternative metrics. I fear is because we are not alone in Schroders and maybe in other financial services who don't have a holistic story of success. Like Mike has not just the DORA metrics, but obviously sentiment from their engineering teams, from the business, and from customers, and ROI. And when he puts it all together, it's incredibly compelling that they are on an uplift. I think we were talking, I don't want to name your metrics, but it was like 9,000 deployments in a month for how many teams?
About 13 teams, was about like 80, 90 people.
90 people, 9,000 production deployments in a month, right? And when you put all of this together, it's incredibly compelling that they're doing it right.
Yeah.
And it's not bad that companies like us are doing it wrong. We're so much bigger. right? So much bigger, so much more risk, regulated, trillions of assets of other people's money. It's not, I don't think it's a bad thing. We're one step behind, right? But I fear the token maxing, and I've seen this in the community, is because our metrics, the good metrics, are not going up. We're saying, well, they're bad, they're wrong. We need other metrics. We must be getting better. We cannot tell the story that we're spending all this money on the tooling, we're rolling it out, and we're now running out of tokens, and having the similar sort of huge painful bills. We cannot say that and say things aren't getting better. So the metrics are wrong. There must be different metrics. I think that's the wrong reaction. And I think tokens maxing is one of those things, is looking towards that as a metric.
Yeah, jump on that point, because unless software is a revenue stream for you, measuring the deployment and the frequency of it and the number of features you ship or whatever can mislead and can create this, okay, you are more efficient now, but am I selling more? Am I going to new markets? Well, you have an NPS that is a clear outcome of your efforts, but some of us don't. We can measure what we can measure in terms of shipping code, but the objective of the firm wasn't to ship code. I mean, not mine right now, it's not to ship code, it's to have a much better client offering and maybe be a better bank for our customers. And that is so many levels detached from the shipping code, and you cannot control for all the variables that are changing.
Yeah.
There are wars, there are supply chain problems, there are credit crunches. So it is very difficult to prove that is because of AI. And sometimes I think if we did bread and butter things of simplification and we got great results, should we just say it was AI? I mean, I can't honestly say that in the firm, but it does feel like it is so hard to associate cause and effect when it comes to AI.
I think there's a real sense that, like, the first time you use this technology, it's magic. So you throw it at the enterprise, and surely magic will happen,
Surely we sell more.
And in many ways, it feels like, are we in that trough that I think Nick showed in his slides? Are we in that trough just before magic happens? Or
we don't have good data, so magic will happen with
Are we measuring the wrong thing? Are we using it wrong? Fuzz, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I have a few theories about what makes a successful organization adapt and change with artificial intelligence or any kind of technologies, right?
Okay.
Some will, and I think about it in terms of empires, right? Empires gain new tools, new technologies, and they scale, and then for some reason, sometimes they fail, and sometimes dramatically. And it often is an element of either too much control, like your feedback loop is too tight and there's not enough flex, and you can't adapt fast enough because there's a lot of centralized control. And then the other extreme is where there is no feedback loops at all, and inherently an organization that had, shall we say, inconsistencies in its design. It had sort of problematic natures in terms of its organization. I think it's a phrase that James used, I remember when we were chatting before, was pouring oxygen on fires. So any little fires that are going on, you pour AI on top of it, and you either find that the fire suddenly grows out of control, or it speeds up one part of the organization to the point where another part is now receiving all the pain of handling that flow. So I think that there needs to be a nuanced approach to feedback where there's enough slack, but there's enough controls, and it has to come from metrics. There's no other way. How do you observe an organization other than metrics? You can't walk the floor if you're in a large organization like a big bank name I'm not going to mention. Yeah. Right. So you have to have some form of metrics and really, scrutinize them. That's fine.
Now, I have to challenge that personally, because I think a rise of things I've seen in middle management, and I wonder if anyone else in the audience has seen this, is maybe you've got all the great metrics, but then someone mediocre in middle management doesn't look at them. They feed them into Claude, generate a document that they send to their manager. they skim read it, but they've never really read it. And then their manager digests it through Claude and spits out something to send to the CEO. And it's a bit like what Martin started the day saying, is like you cannot, there's a risk that no matter how much data we've got, and we've got an explosion of data, unless we engage understanding, it's worthless.
Absolutely.
How do we engage understanding at the senior level?
Martin's words are to be heeded at every level of the organization. It's not just for software engineers. We all need to be engaged, don't we? We need to be listening, interpreting ourselves before we can kind of... I think that's probably going to evolve eventually. We'll burn a few things. A few heads will hit stones, as they say in some parts of the world.
As soon as I hear you talk about that, right, and when you were talking about the middle manager, right, and I'd love your opinion on this as well, and especially yours on reflecting whether it's the same at Deutsche Bank, is the communication hierarchy, right? In a lot of old companies, it's very, very deep. So essentially what you described is communication going up and down the hierarchy, and of course at every step it loses something, right? There's a bit of tax, it loses a bit of nuance, or in your case, it lost all nuance in one hop. Right? And I think our colleagues agree, and many of them actually agreed for a long time, you have to shorten the depth of the communication graph, right? If it's too big, then things will be going up and down that stack, and they'll be going up and down maybe quicker than ever because of AI. But in your scenario, they still lost everything in that one hop, right? And you remove the hop, right? Rather than having whatever information went through the middle management to get to where it needed to go and come back down again, maybe there's a more direct route.
Now, I wonder if, Mike, is that solved by having the data available to the CEO via some Claude dashboard like you've done? Or is it that somehow you've got to fire all the people that aren't engaged and just have the senior people who are trying to understand?
Yes.
Everything.
So I think we look at it from two ways. I think the strategy we have is bottom up, top down. So bottom up, we're giving everybody access to tools in the organization. So everybody's got Codex at the moment. You can do what you will with it, and then seeing what comes out of that. But the other way we're doing it is more top down, which is more how we're engaging with the leadership of the organization, especially the VPs of any function, and explaining to them it's actually their job to embed AI in their part of the system. And as Fuzz talks about, it's really important to get those feedback loops, especially when you're rolling out AI in these areas. So we're doing it from both angles, but I think, James, you keep talking about when we have a chat, the idea of the fundamentals need to be there to be able to do that. And that part of the fundamentals is data. So if you think about the three layers of kind of agentic work, the first layer is like the context, the second layer is the agents themselves, and then there's an orchestration layer above that. We have, so the context for us is 7 years worth of data that we've been, since I joined, that we've been putting into data products into our data mesh. We've got an MCP on top of that then plugs into Claude. So then you can now ask it any question about the business. And so that's any part of the business that includes engagement over the last, I was trying to show you at lunch. Engagement of teams, through to deploys, through to the kind of KPIs. So we process petabytes of data a month that we are actually then putting into that system.
That's your cartography.
It is, yes, that's why.
Exactly.
Beautifully done as well.
So it's that. So having a map of your organization, being able to design that intentionally, to be able to evolve that over time, and then describe that to AI. So then anybody can ask it any questions. And this is the thing that when they're non-technical, one of the first things we show them when they come into the business is this, and they're like, oh my goodness, that's so you can do this? Yeah. So it's like, what was it? It's like, how many holidays did we book yesterday? What's the gender split? Of that gender split, what is it? So you can just keep going down. What does it look like year on year? Ask it question after question. And so it's a very different way of interacting with the business. But again, it's a little bit costly, but we have to find a way of proving the ROI on that. So it's bit top down, bottom up, give people access to the tools, see what they do with it, but then be much more intentional about how we embed that into the organization, which is where I think the contact center is a really good model for.
Yeah, I've scrabbled through the sense that a lot of people in organizations are sort of running blind because they don't have access to the data they'd need to make good decisions. And for a while in our industry, we were told that big data would solve that, and platforms and data meshes would solve it. And it nearly did, but people couldn't actually get access to that data because the average person can't write SQL or stand up a Kafka query.
And look as shit and that sort of stuff, right? Yeah, so all of those things, but now it's just an MCP on top of that.
Yeah, and finally people can actually, across the organization, can see it.
And this is the next layer of things that's kind of been released. So I was chatting to Google about that yesterday. MCP is a bit hacky, so they're building their own kind of like language on top of that you can put inside of agents. You build specific agents for those sorts of tools.
Is that A2A?
Sorry?
Is that the agent-to-agent protocol?
No, it's just within a thing.
Semantic.
One question.
Spoke.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So I can see, since you've been using MCP so much in your organization, I can see that if we have a great data strategy, then that enables AI because it's great with processing data, it's great with context. Finally, people can access and sort of read things. To what degree do you then give AI the tools to take action? How much are you delegating action and decision across to AI?
So it's not just I think all of these things are just at the very bottom. It's like a decent API that we've put the thing on. MCP is just the current way of interacting with that. Yeah. So how we delegate, I think, again, the contact center is probably an easier way of thinking about that because we have a chatbot or an agent that you can either speak to or you can chat to. So if you speak to it, we resolve about 30% of all voice calls now. So, and it's not a press 1 for this, press 2 for that. It's a natural conversation. Yeah. And we also, like from a chat perspective, it's about 60 to 85%. But Sandy also speaks 5 different languages. So it's you can ask it any question in different things. So how does that work? Well, it actually has somewhere in the region now about 700 different intents that you can do. So we can ask it things like, what's the luggage allowance on my holiday? Or when's my next payment date? Or would like to change my next payment date. And that's where we're increasingly allowing it to make more and more decisions on our behalf. So
how do you go about sort of, because one of the things that we've talked about earlier was software quality and testing and guarantees, if you like, of outputs. And I have this sort of obsession around deciding between stochastic tools versus deterministic ones. How do you go about thinking about that in terms of a tool that's so customer-facing? So
at the moment, it's the agent's still in the loop. So the latest thing that we rolled out was, so if you've got a problem on your holiday, say the room's not as clean as you'd want it to be, you take a picture now and you can send it to us. We understand what's in that picture. We understand the context of the conversation. We look up that hotel. We look up the cleanliness reports previously from that hotel. Okay. We look at the contract with that hotel. We look at the refund terms. And basically, it does all of the work that you would have done in the background if you're an agent, but it spits out the answer for you in that moment. And so they've been doing this for literally years. So they've got an intuition about whether that's right or wrong. And so we're like pushing it to them to say yes. Yeah.
So sorry, you please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was thinking there's so many lessons on so many of the stories you told us. And I can't help but think that it's harder to undo some of the data strategies, incomplete data strategies, and forgetting even the architecture and the technology strategy, but the actual data content, than it is to do something cool, right? To undo maybe several decades of bad data, not bad data architecture or bad data strategy. Bad data is really very complex because you start to put doubts in people's minds. Say, oh yes, it gave me this answer, but I know that database is not very reliable, so I'm just going to ignore it. You know, and I think that is one of the differences between being able to start from potentially a simpler set of problems, because undoing is not something we talk about a lot. You know,
yeah, it seems
the
like
feedback
you've got a
you're
slight
talking
luxury in that you're almost kind of, you've got this right from the start.
No.
I guess some sense, compared to a 200-year-old bank, right? I would have thought they're in a...
Yeah, but a hacky startup that was basically my first year when I turned up, I remember like it was bookings really start, the peak season for booking holidays starts in Boxing Day. So that's when and my first year, for the first 3 months, was trying to keep the website up, but it fell over every night at 9:30. There was literally, if you think about like what it looked like, our contact center, it was on the south coast, it was above a shop. Everybody had a massive desktop computer with a CRT monitor with the passwords laminated and stuck on the front. So if you then like fast forward now, then we've got, so I mean, we didn't even know how many, the phones wouldn't terminate properly. Anyway, so what that looked like to what it is now, it's night and day. But that's, as James keeps talking about, it's like the foundations that you put in place. The teams that work well, they've got the right ways of thinking, they're focused on the data, they've been doing that for years. And it's one of those things, it's not like in a crisis, it's not what you do in the first 24 hours, it's what you've done for the previous 3 years. And it's the same with innovation, right? When AI came out, it's not the things that we're doing right now. It's the fact that we've done 7 years of hard graft to get the data right, the engineering right, the architecture at the scale, the systems that are really fast.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
And I'm assuming the teams, right? The teams in the organisation, because I think, because the data mesh came up, and I think most people forgot that it's a socio-technical thing. You're supposed to say we need to reorganise our people to solve the new size of data, and the tools enable that reorganisation. But then they're kind of like, well, the reorganisation is really hard, and people don't like to move, so we'll just get the tools. And we'll just ignore the social part. But that's the foundation.
Yeah, surely we can just throw AI at it, right?
No,
No matter what the current state
There's
is.
no doubt that will be, if it isn't already, the new attempt, for sure.
I'm picking on you because I assume very old, large, established banks have these problems more than anyone. But are you going into this with a basket case that you have to try and AI up? And if so, how are you dealing with it?
I mean, a lot of it, I think, is trusting in allowing the foundations to build, because there is a painful period of time where it's expensive to transform and it doesn't necessarily show results. And if there isn't that trust to build the foundations, it's very hard to keep launching over and over again. Now, will AI give us an opportunity to make that launch period shorter and make other, because I think the gold is in the organizational transformation still. I think the AI is just an accelerant.
Yes.
So will AI make it easier for us to shorten the time before our next attempt at laying better foundations, or even give it more urgency?
And it's very similar to the digital transformation of the early, I suppose, 2010s, right? And transformation didn't happen. We just had a digital layer on top of quite a lot of old stuff. And I think we are placing some bets, right? Some of the AI use cases are just like that. You're just putting it on top of something really, really hard to solve that has human knowledge that can be captured and can be exercised in the moment. Some of it is truly transformational thinking, should we be doing this at all? Or should we be looking at our know your customer journey differently? Should we be talking not about know your customer, but actually the time it takes to say yes to a customer, just like flipping the question. But as a large organization, we're taking bets on quite a lot of those things. The ones that are, I suppose, more successful are the ones that you have more control over data, like this change assurance advisor that I was talking about. The data is closer to people who can clean it, because there is the feedback loop, right? So if my user stories are not very well written, next time around, they're going to be better written. Very different from maybe historical reasons for settlement failures, like a deep, deep history that doesn't have proper social contract around ownership. Like, who is responsible for fixing this? It's like, oh, look over there. Like the many, many responsible people. And I think that is, there are two big things that I often consider when looking at data for AI. One is from Demins, saying that without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So yes, we need to care about this, but then we need to make a decision with that data. I'm not quite sure if they're calling the bluff of, I don't have data, I can't make a decision. And the other one, I forget the other smart person who said that, but if you torture your data, you can get it to say anything you want, right?
Yeah.
Something along those lines, paraphrasing. And sometimes those executive dashboards have tortured data because you know they're going to make a decision on that basis of data. So you clean it, you bend it, you normalize it.
You make the facts fit the theory.
And now mix those two things, not having good data plus torture data, and give it to AI. I mean, the risks, we're talking about explosion of risks here, amplification, many of the speakers said today.
Yeah.
Amplifying risks comes from that.
But I agree with all of that, I really do. But at the same time, here am I running my bank, right? I see so many projects that, okay, we decide what we're going to do. We launch a new product. We launch a new project to do some software. It takes 18 months. It never delivers. It dies. And I've spent $500,000 or $3 million. It was a waste of time. I see this technology come along that can turn an 18-month software development project into weeks sometimes. Why can't I just
use it?
Why is that not just working,
Well,
right? Why can I not launch new stuff?
I don't want
Fuzz,
to monopolize.
I can
Fuzz,
see you
go
want to jump
Fuzz.
in. Fuzz, go.
There was just so much that inspired me from
The
what you were
triggered you,
saying.
you mean, like
Because
the
I've been in
triggered you.
your, that scenario. So one of the wonderful things about large organizations, ones that have been around for a very long time, they have a heritage, is the power, and people sometimes forget this, the power of evolution. Okay, evolution is such a powerful concept in nature. You have many different experiments happening in a sense. You have one team out here who's doing things this way, another team is doing it in a different way. They are doing data curation and maintenance in a different way. You walk the floor. That's one of the things that senior people do, is they walk the floor and they find out, what is it about them that's doing something different? Selection of the fittest, amplification, signal processing of that way that they are doing it so that other people find out about it. And then let's let the process run again and see if we can see better ways of doing things.
Okay, I'm going to push directly on that metaphor,
Please,
right? If my hypothesis is correct, those software life cycles are contracted from 18 months down to a month, right? So by evolution, I should see a massive acceleration of the survival of the fittest. We should be able to get through 18 generations in the same amount of time it used to take for one. So we should now be starting to see us, as an industry, evolving very fast. James,
If you take the feedback.
if you take the feedback, but surely we can't miss all that feedback, right?
I want to come back to that though as well.
Okay.
Okay, so the other factor of it's another kind of unwritten law of the universe, is that there's propagation time, right? And there's induction and capacitance in the system. So you find that one place accelerates. It creates a lot of delivery, but also creates gradually increasing to a crescendo of pressure on other parts of the system, other organizations that you're dependent on, your partners, for example, your clients, they all will feel that pressure in different ways at different times. So it won't happen instantaneously. There's going to be a wave, and it will push back, and you'll just have to adapt to that. I mean, I can't put it in other sort of more precise scientific terms, but that's the way I kind of see it happening.
I was hoping for more optimism. I was hoping for a sense that...
I am optimistic.
Okay.
This is his optimism.
Oh, that's what you look like when you're
Yeah,
optimistic.
this is my optimism.
Right.
Entropy is inevitable, but so is complexity and evolution. So those things are natural.
Maybe, but for Love Holidays, I think the thing that we're trying to do is more intentionally design the system. So I think when companies get a bit big, and you've talked about before, they ossify a little bit. So they're really hard to change, and if you can't change, then failure is almost inevitable, especially when things are moving quickly. So what we've been trying to do as an organization is adapt our operating model continually to the new world that we're seeing. So as a business, which is even in 7 years, we've adapted, this is the 4th time, and we're changing fundamentally how we're setting up the organization to exploit AI off the back of it. So I think more organizations have to be able to definitely walk the floor, definitely see what's happening, but be much more intentional about how you're setting up your organization and have an opinion like top down rather than trying to.
That, to me, if I may, that suggests that the problem is not the project evolving faster, but the organizational structure evolving faster.
I would argue that point, yes, 100%, and then the people within it. So if I go back to one of the things that we did at Love Holidays, as I said, it was quite bad when it started. One of the great things that happened, well, was COVID, because we could actually rip everything out. So for 2 years, we just basically doubled down on the technology, and were able to kind of actually fix everything. So when we came out of it, we're a very.
It was a survival case as well, right? Because you knew if you didn't do that, you won't get a lot of opportunities to patch it forever.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and that's weirdly, the previous company I was at, the same thing happened, where I got 2 years to just rip it apart and start again. So the kind of getting the foundations right has been basically the pattern between the last 2 times I've scaled a business.
Yeah.
So what we need is a mild apocalypse.
A mild-
And
Right.
Donald Trump's working on that for us, right?
Oh, God,
Well,
don't.
I think your point, though, it was that there will be expectations of, foundations for 2 years. Is that 6 months now? But who knows? Who knows? Maybe some things just take 2 years still. Right? Why do I just assume that everything shortens? I mean, if it's changing, like, you were talking about the evolutionary mechanisms, right? And the evolution, relies on fitness functions. If your fitness functions are wrong, then you're evolving the wrong things, right? If your fitness function is tortured data, then that tortured data is telling the wrong signal, which will lead to the wrong action. And you could end up still in a situation where you are burning 2 years and still going in the wrong direction.
With all these problems, though, do you give me your optimism level of how much this is going to improve?
Well,
How
I think
many times?
we're painting a bleak picture.
Yeah.
There's a lot of success at Schroders, actually. We are, some teams are burning very bright. We are achieving things that we thought probably was impossible before. I'm coding again, like I never, I was an engineer once upon a time, and I never had time because in leadership, it's PowerPoint presentations. But AI means I can code again, and I can store my context, and I can contribute. So I think it's going to be, I don't think it's net positive or negative, but it's almost, I think, to Martin's point, it's happened. So, try and ride the wave and have the best run you can on that wave. But definitely, to anybody who's still on the fence, and I think Martin said it, don't sleep on it. That's
One pattern I'm definitely seeing is the number of people who moved out of coding and into management now saying, yeah, I've got back into coding. That's got to be a net good, no matter whatever else happens. But I think we've got about 10 minutes, so I want to throw it open for questions. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? I've got 1 million more, but I will yield. We've got one down here. Oh, Mike got to you first, please.
Hi there. It's more a question about sort of the democratization of development tools, and it's something that I've noticed, colleagues who maybe have never done software development, really sort of saying, hey, I'm going to dip my toes into a bit of Python, or I'm going to do a Java project, and they're spinning up tools, and it's brilliant, but there then comes a question of ownership. Who owns these products? When something becomes a dashboard for one person, becomes a dashboard for 2 people, then it becomes a software engineering project, and then who does that land with? How have you guys sort of handled, or have you guys handled challenges, issues like this, and what suggestions would you have?
Who wants to take that?
It's just so close to my heart. My third or fourth financial crisis, around about 2015, came about with a regulation that most of you know, BCBS 239, is the risk aggregation directive. And in one of the banks that actually was here today, we found 7,000 Excel spreadsheets in the process of managing risk and liquidity and capital. Yeah, and it's no different with AI. Everybody wants to code some stuff. It's going to end up in the process, and we are going to end up in an inexplainable. Is it inexplainable or inexplainable? Inexplicable. Something in English that that will get us into trouble. So ownership is got to be the first. We are very good in very painful ways in vetting the use of AI, because the idea is great, you can learn from it, and you should. But in order to be part of the system, we are actually being very careful, because the organizational debt, the regulatory risk that may come with it in financial services is not negligible. It is actually very material. So,
Mike,
yeah.
you want to throw in 2 cents?
You've got a slightly different kind of, not a different view, but like from a different angle. Some of our product people are actually using it to understand what's in the code base as well, rather than just writing code. They're checking out the code, they're looking at it, they're reading to understand it, and they know more about that code base than some of the developers do as well. So they can ask very awkward questions to people about what does it do, and then if they don't give the right answer, then they can
why is it doing it?
Yeah.
Which is a great answer.
And another one of our product people, he was one of the guys that spent, I think it was 35 grand in a month just going through the backlog, developing all the integrations with our partners, which yielded no value. But
I read the question in a different way, because I think I know what you mean around, I've just decided to write this in some obscure language or some language that I don't think the rest of the team will understand. And the only one sentence is this. It's not about how do I get good with AI. It's how we get good with AI. We have to work as a team, right? We have to develop the standards as a team. And yeah.
The code is knowledge, right? Code is, it's sometimes, whether we like it or not, is the actual reflection of your business. And whether is a business reading code or generating code or IT teams generating code, it doesn't matter. What matters is the current AI, as in large language models, is good to interpret language. So that could be a fountain of corporate knowledge that can lead to sustainability. The problem is we are not using it yet, I think, for knowledge harvesting seriously. I sometimes feel like I need to hire people from the British Library that actually care about retaining knowledge and information.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think it's untapped value there.
Do you know, on that specific point of value, I have to throw in my 2 cents, even though I'm not allowed to, I'm just the host. But if you've got non-programmers coming up with some dashboard or tool and you find it's just for their personal use, but then someone else uses it and another person, before you know it, 12 people who know nothing about software are using this tool, that's a success. You've discovered an untapped need and you are serving it. Now is the time to swoop in with proper engineering, but it's not a failure, it's a sign of success. And we had another question here.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about communication. So now we have sped up the code, maybe we have knowledge harvesting, but how do we speed up communication?
I think your point, wasn't it, James?
Because many projects fail because of communication.
Yeah, well, I think there's 2 points to the time it takes for communication to land, right? First, actually, we're quite slow at communicating as people. Like, we speak slowly. It takes a long time for us to share ideas and actually admit maybe we don't know what the other person is talking about, and that happens all the time. But you've got the distance, which is kind of the cartography. How far does that information have to travel, right? Because it's going to lose stuff on the way. So AI and organization structure and everything, I think, will be able to help you, and probably more valuable at helping us communicate than even its ability to code, I think.
I think the fidelity of the message and timing and distance is very important, but I'm running out of cognitive capacity to be communicated to. Right? It's a bit like the presentation with all the bloggers or the whatever YouTube channels or whatever Twitter thing was happening there, with lots of opinions, lots of very, very valid points of view, that as a leader, I need to put this into this complex system that is only in my head, because my maps are not live yet, and we all have our cognitive limitations, and the more complex the world becomes, the harder it is to assimilate very well communicated messages. So I wonder if we are discovering new bottlenecks, right? That as the system becomes more efficient, we end up becoming the bottleneck for the machines. Let's be honest, the machines now are creating content for us rather than us leveraging processing power of the machines. And I think this inversion is going to be apparent in the next few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like with my middle managers communicating via documents they've never read or written, speeding up communication isn't technically the problem because we can do that faster than ever. It's speeding up shared understanding.
Yeah, I think so. You mean, right?
And
Yeah.
that's going to remain at the same pace as our wetware brains, but
And shared excitement.
shared excitement,
Like,
yes, because there's an emotional component
Yeah.
to understanding, right?
You know, but I was talking again to Mike and Fuzz as well, right? A lot of all the successful projects I've been on will be when we've managed to make everybody understand everything in their own way of understanding, and everyone understands everything differently, but get excited about it.
Yeah.
Right? And that brings, who knows how much more, productivity and availability and awareness of your team to the problem. And, maybe it makes it easier to do that, I hope, because I think if we're all excited and we all enjoy what we're building, we build better stuff.
Yeah.
And I think better stuff makes more money in the end.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, we should hope that these machines bring the joy back to programming as individual managers who've lost the touch and to teams of the people building things faster and better than ever.
And I think
I would
intent, the persistence of an intent and a goal through at least a couple of years is what's missing right now, right? We have we have the mechanism to get there faster, but we have fewer shared goals. Sweeping generalization, right? But I met some colleagues that I worked with in the early 2000s, mid-2010, and we had the same goal. Some of these team members, you know who you are, for 7 years.
Yeah.
And not the exact same, it modified. There were crises in the middle. We had to react. We had to adapt. But we had that same goal. Now I think AI is not the goal, but it's on everybody's strategy. So it feels to me like, oh, come on, guys, there's something more important we should be coalescing around. And that is going to, I think, show the KPIs and the results with the customer a lot more than obsessing about token consumption or whatever else, right?
Very soon we will coalesce around the shared goal of going down to the ground floor, at which point I invite you all to share your ideas and your thoughts with your panelists. But for now, please thank James Brown, Simone Steele, Mike Jones, and Fuzz. Thank you very much.